Hello and welcome to the programme. Children are being encouraged to gamble by some of the most popular video games out there. That was the verdict of MPs here in the UK recently. So our question today is gaming a gateway to gambling? You're watching Roundtable. Hello from me, David Foster. More than 9 in 10 children play video games here in the UK, sometimes using real-world money to gamble on virtual items. With 55,000 children classed as having a gambling problem, video gaming is coming under increasing scrutiny.
Playing games online can be rewarding and exciting and help children to develop skills and friendships. But there's concern it may also be drawing them into gambling. Some games offer loot boxes, a virtual lucky dip paid for with real money that could help the player progress. But what's inside the box stays a mystery until the money is handed over. That, say critics, is the same as gambling. 93% of children are said to play video games in the UK. And a study has found that around 66% of 11 to 16-year-olds have been exposed to gambling adverts, while 2% in the same age group are identified as problem gamblers. So are video games promoting the practice of gambling to children?
Right, first of all, we go to Antalya in Turkey. We are joined by the professional gamer Ahmet Sonuc, known as Jarin, on the online gaming community. From Athens, we have Dr. Daria Kuss, member of the International Gaming Research Unit. In the studio, Vicki Shotbolt joins us, chief exec and founder of ParentZone, and Bradford too, co-founder of Safer Online Gambling Group. Great to have you all here. Ahmet, let me come to you first of all. I know you're a professional, but in the simpler terms, for most of the people out there, what do you think the real attraction of gaming is?
The real attraction of gaming is mostly it's the multiplayer games where you can, socialize without getting out of your comfort zone, basically. And it's much cheaper than going out to, watch a movie, to have a dinner with friends. You just buy a game and you invest time, and mostly you socialize with your friends.
Cheaper if you don't become addicted.
Of course.
And is there a danger?
Of course there's a danger. If we're talking in terms of gambling, yes, there is a danger. It is a thing in gaming. It has been a thing for a long time. In mobile gaming, it has come to the public's attention after, I think, a state representative from Hawaii who prepared the legislation in the US. Now we're discussing it here.
Okay, you are a professional gamer. You do it, you say, to socialize. Could you give it up? Do you think you might be addicted?
I mean, it depends on the definition of addiction. What is addiction for you?
Okay, well, let's talk about that at the table here. Adam, your father was an addicted gambler. He built up huge amounts of debt. He went to prison. Do you see gaming and gambling as being intrinsically linked?
I think the mechanics of the way the games work can be seen to be very similar. I think we've got a bigger question about whether gaming is gambling and whether gambling has elements of gaming. That could go on for a long time. But I think the thing we need to look at closely here is this linkage with finance. So gaming is meant to be something that's fun. And what we've found and what other people are finding is that young people are being enticed into spending money that they don't necessarily have to get upgrades, to get special players, etc. But they don't know the chance of them getting that object or not getting it at the time.
Is it a bit like buying a lottery ticket? You pay money to hopefully
well, at least
to
with
get
a
a
lottery
reward.
ticket, you know the odds. But with loot boxes and things like that, you don't know the odds. So to us, I would see that as a form of gambling. And especially with the gameplay elements being so quick, it's certainly a gateway to gambling.
Okay, well, we'll talk about restrictions that can and cannot be put onto this thing. Ahmet, I'll come back to you in a moment because I saw you nodding in response to something that Adam said. But Vicki, you've done a report into this. What were your general findings about it?
I think our general findings were that it was... The reason we did the report, I should say, is because young people think it's a problem. So young people came to us and talked to us about skin gambling, and gamers came to us.
Skin gambling, help us with that.
Skin gambling is when you use a virtual currency, a skin, something that you can buy in a game, as a currency to gamble with, is the shortcut. It's a complicated ecosystem, but it's not good, and gamers don't think it's good. And that's why we started looking at this whole subject area. And I think when young people themselves say to you, this is a problem, then you really have to listen.
And what did they say the problem actually was?
Multiple problems. Certainly more mature gamers, shall we say, said that they remembered a time when opening loot boxes wasn't part of the gaming ecosystem. It wasn't what you had to do. So now they feel as though half of the children we spoke to said that they felt as though they had to spend money in order to enjoy gaming. And that's terrible. You know, that's a sorry state of affairs. The link to gambling, I think, is all of those issues around not knowing what the odds are, wanting to keep opening those loot boxes because you want the thing that you want and you don't know whether you're going to get it, so you just spend more and more money. In our report, we talk about dark nudges, and that's what the gaming industry is doing to children.
OK, Daria, we want to bring everybody in at an early stage in this. I note that you said most people do this for pleasure, but the young are more at risk than, what did you call them, the more mature?
More mature.
The more mature gamers out there.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, you know, from a psychosocial perspective, psychosocial development happens in stages. So the younger a child is, the more likely they are to respond impulsively, the more likely it is that they're going to engage in potentially addictive behaviors. And these kinds of behaviors can be gaming and gambling related. So for them, there may be less barriers to actually engaging in paying money for games, paying money for items in the games, in contrast to older adolescents or adults who may indeed have more of a barrier in their brains, really saying, stop, this is enough, and now I'm going to quit with the game, or I'm actually not going to spend more money on in-game items.
I'll go to Ahmet now, because I know you wanted to say something early on. Is there a way of spotting those that are taking advantage of young people and those that are out there simply for the fun and the hell of it?
This is a business model, but there are different ways to implement it into the game. So you can have a predatory business model where where the item that comes out of the loot box can actually affect your gameplay. But there are some games out there you don't necessarily have to open up loot boxes to enjoy the full experience. So those items are mostly vanity items, mostly cosmetic nature, you know.
But how would you know which were the ones that were taking advantage of you?
The ones that are, you know, selling the upgrades, the items that come out of the loot box that affect the gameplay, those are the ones who are actually practicing the predatory business models. Okay,
and help me with this, because I don't do it. Would you recognise those as being more sophisticated in terms of their graphics because they have the revenue to spend, because they have this income stream, than those that are out there just for the hell of it, which may be slightly more amateurish? Is that another way of spotting the differences?
No, it's not correlated.
They're all pretty sophisticated, are they?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and I noticed that you said that you want to ban exploitative practices.
Yes.
This is exploitation for profit?
Nothing but profit, really. I think, you know, I don't see the games companies investing in trying to educate players about the pros and cons of loot boxes and how they should be used responsibly. I think the practice we're seeing is that in a lot of cases, families are spending more money than they want to. I was speaking to an 11-year-old last week with his parents who came to us and said he spent almost £500 in an entire month playing on different apps on a tablet. And the parents couldn't understand how it had got to that level, but it was simply because the games are so immersive and you lose track of time, you lose track of how much you spend. Very, very similar to how gambling works. It's designed to be alluring, help you lose track of your surroundings and feel kind of safe in that environment. We've got to look at the way the games are designed as well as just these features like loot boxes. So yes, exploitation shouldn't be existing. And that's
okay, well, tell us more about that in just a moment. And I want to come to you, Daria. What was it you just said? It's easy to lose track of time, Adam said, and how much you spend. That's part of the narcotic effect of this almost, isn't it?
Absolutely. So really, when you're looking at the research on gaming, and especially online gaming addiction, what you'll find is that gamers who spend a lot of time gaming will find themselves in a state of flow. So the time in-game is very different to the time outside of the game. So if in-game we're thinking, maybe 10, 20 minutes have passed, and then we'll look at our watch and actually hours have gone by in real life or outside of the game, we realize that those games are incredibly immersive. They can take up a lot of time. They take up a lot of cognitive energy. And this is also why people really enjoy spending time with them. They're extremely entertaining. They really capture, the kind of skill levels that players have. And they match the skill levels with the level of challenge that the players experience in the game, making the games an incredibly immersive and very entertaining experience for most gamers.
Whereas one marijuana joint doesn't necessarily lead to heroin addiction, spending a little bit of money on these gaming video games doesn't necessarily lead to ruination. But is there a way of checking your behaviour in this? What should you do?
Absolutely, there's absolutely a way of checking your behaviour. I think, from a clinical perspective, so I used to work with gamers who came into a clinic actually with severe addiction problems. And one of the main criteria that led them to seek professional help was to lose control over their behaviours. So they tried everything. They tried to speak to their parents or their significant others in terms of help. They tried to cut down the gaming time themselves. They tried to cut down the amount of money that they spend on the game, but they didn't manage to do it. So the loss of control is the main criterion that actually leads people to seek professional help. But of course, in order to qualify for an addiction, we've got a number of recognized clinical criteria that are all written down in the diagnostic manual. So for the first time in history earlier this year, the World Health Organization has recognized gaming disorder as a real pathology. So it is included in the ICD-11, the International Classification System. And psychiatrists, doctors, psychologists can over the world now use those criteria in order to diagnose a person, in order to diagnose an addictive gamer with gaming disorder, which really allows us also to provide treatment, which also gives us the impetus to do research on the topic because it's still a very young and early field. And now with the integration of loot boxes within games, I think we have another element that can make the games potentially more addictive, which can indeed get young people particularly to spend a lot of money on those games and create additional problems on top of all the negative consequences that an addiction brings, which is tied to a loss of control, but also, loss of jobs in some instances, psychosocial problems with the relationships, withdrawal symptoms, development of tolerance, etc. So all of these kinds of problems may be a consequence of addictive gaming.
Okay, Vicki, I know you want to say something. Then I have a question for you too. So much out there, isn't there?
So much to unpick there, and I think it's really important for parents to remember that there's a difference between compulsive gaming and addictive gaming. I think a child who's got a genuine addiction, you need professional help to deal with that. A child who's finding it difficult to manage their gaming needs their parents to set some boundaries in place. And there's a huge difference between...
How do you spot the difference?
Oh, you spot it in the ways that parents spot all kinds of problems with their kids. Are they not doing their homework? Are they struggling at school? Are they not getting enough sleep? Are they having serious tantrums that you can't manage when you try and stop them gaming?
Is that a way of spotting the difference between compulsion and addiction?
I think that line between compulsion and addiction, you're absolutely right, it's a difficult one to spot. But parents, we've spoken to parents who simply cannot control their child's behaviour. Children who won't eat, they won't stop to eat. Children who won't even take a toilet break because of their gaming. When those sorts of behaviours are that extreme.
What about regulation?
For us...
In other words, you're of a certain age, you can't use this game. Is that possible?
It's possible. I don't think it would be desirable, because I think what we can't lose in this entire conversation is the incredible positive effect that gaming can have and the pleasure that children get from gaming, and you wouldn't want to lose that. But what could be regulated are loot boxes. It's the financial model that's underpinning gaming at the moment that's exploitative, and we could absolutely regulate about that.
Yeah, I mentioned that first cigarette earlier, Adam. If you take into account the positive signs that Vicki mentions there, isn't that just leading you down a path, perhaps, to more serious playing, if you like, or involvement?
I think the issue we have when we come back to that point is we live in a fix-it-later society. So therefore, at the moment, these things have been allowed onto the market and they're so normalised for young people and their families they don't see the harm in it until it's too late. Same case with my dad with the over-addiction to gambling. We didn't notice there was a problem until it all got too late and he was in jail. So,
Fine line, though, you can't ban them, can you?
You can't ban it, but you can certainly put restrictions on the things that cause the harm. And in this case, that's the loot boxes. They need to be stopped.
Ahmed, I noticed in the notes you gave to our producer, you talked about parental guidance. But children lie to their parents, don't they? Or they find ways around these sorts of things.
Of course, I did when I was a kid. But I want to talk about something else as well. Everything that is entertaining could be poisonous in a way. I think it's the dose that is important, because gaming is not just entertaining, but it adds a lot to the children as well, such as, the way you solve problems get faster, the way you coordinate with other people is better, even maybe socializing. I developed my English skills when I was playing games, so this is something that I wanted to also point out.
So the benefits of it, and Daria, you're nodding vigorously. You agree with that?
Well, absolutely. I think, we really have to bear in mind it's only a very small minority of excessive users who will ever develop any kind of addiction-related problems. For the significant majority, gaming can be incredibly beneficial. And there's a lot of research that really shows that, gaming can increase cognitive skills, it can improve your memory, it can improve hand-eye coordination. There's so many innumerable, really, benefits to gaming. But at the same time, we cannot disregard the possible problems that can be a consequence of excessive gaming. So I think we really need to find a fine balance, acknowledging addiction-related problems whilst not over-pathologizing everyday behavior.
But isn't Ahmed right? There's a danger in too much of anything.
You can potentially say that. I think, when we're looking at behavioral addictions, so addictions to actual behaviors rather than substance-related addictions, we will find that people can become addicted to doing things rather than ingesting things. So becoming addicted to gambling, gaming, to sex, for example, to shopping. All of these kinds of behaviors can potentially become addictive.
What about, this is for each one of you to consider, what about making it compulsory? And we have an international gaming world here, so international law is very difficult. But what about, let's say in the UK, making it compulsory to have a subscription to get into these loot boxes rather than clicking on them there and then. So somebody has to sign up to a contract. If it's a child, they may not have a credit card. They would have to go to their parents. What about that?
I think you could, and I think, so if you take some devices, you do subscribe so that you can stream games, and what happens then is that parents put their credit card details in, and crucially, you then lose oversight of the individual purchases. And that's the bit, you really need to know what your child is spending their money on. Are they buying a new game? Are they buying an upgrade? Or are they spending the evening opening loot boxes? So we think what we need to do is to recognise that a virtual currency is a currency. And the minute you do that, loot boxes become gambling.